To rise up voices from the front lines, your window into relationships, identity, safety, emotional awareness, regulation and intelligence, unleashed potential, passion and purpose.
Welcome back to Rise Up Voices from the Front Lines, and this is a trauma-informed leadership series episode. I'm your host, Krista Fee, and today we're going to talk about what it means to create safe havens as a leader. Let me paint a picture. A lighthouse in the middle of a raging sea. The waves are brutal. The wind is howling. The ship creaks under pressure. The lighthouse doesn't still the water. It doesn't stop the storm. What it does is shine. It steadies the sailor. Leadership works the same way. In moments of cultural squall, organizational crisis, or private fear, people are not just searching for comfort. They're searching for steadiness, something they can count on that doesn't move, an orienting beam that cuts through the fog and says, you can navigate by this. This is the call of lighthouse leadership, creating conditions where people can take risks, speak truth, and make mistakes without humiliation or retaliation. Not comfort, but trust and steadiness. Let's start with biology, the physiology of safety, because safety isn't just a feeling, it's a nervous system reality. When human beings don't know how they'll be treated or what will happen next, their bodies shift into vigilance. Cortisol spikes, adrenaline surges, attention narrows, and creativity and memory degrade. Over time, chronic threat literally reshapes the brain, weakening executive function and locking people into survival modes. By contrast, signals of safety, predictable routines, honorable boundaries, a calm tone of voice, invite the nervous system back into regulation. The vagus nerve tells the body it's safe to engage. Collaboration, problem solving, and innovation switch back online. Safe havens are physiological infrastructure for performance. I've seen this in frontline responders when command staff create steady briefings, clear expectations, and a tone of calm authority. Crews regulate faster when leaders bark, shame, or change rules unpredictability. Crews stay on edge and mistakes multiply. Safety isn't soft, it's steadfast, and it's science. Physiological safety, risk without retaliation. Amy Ebbetson calls this psychological safety, a shared belief that the team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. Notice the tension there. Risk and safety together. Safety without risk is comfort. It feels nice, but it's stagnant. Risk without safety is hazard. It might energize briefly, but it corrodes over time. High-performing cultures have both at once. They welcome dissent, they spotlight errors early, they treat near misses as gold, information that protects the system instead of grounds for shame. And here's where trauma-informed leadership sharpens the point. People who carry histories of betrayal, humiliation, or instability have lower thresholds for threat. The cost of speaking up is higher for them. A leader's presence isn't neutral. It's regulating or destabilizing. That's why leaders must become co-regulators. Your tone, your predictability, your follow-through. These are not soft skills. They're nervous system interventions. A 5-minute predictable check-in can shift an entire team from survival mode into engagement mode. I once worked with a fire department that had been through back-to-back tragedies, a line of duty death followed by budget cuts that gutted morale. The crews were exhausted, anxious, and angry. The chief thought the answer was discipline. He came down harder, punished mistakes, micromanaged daily routines, and demanded perfection. He thought control was stewardship, but the result? His crew shut down. They stopped bringing forward near misses. They played it safe on calls, avoiding initiative, and in silence, they grew brittle. When the chief finally shifted, creating predictable briefings, inviting honest critique, and holding steady instead of punitive, the culture began to heal slowly. Crews started talking again. Safety reports increased. Trust began to grow. The lighthouse didn't stop the storms they faced, but it steadied the sailors. Let's talk about the cost of unsafe systems. Unsafe systems run on fear, and fear is very expensive. People self-silence, they hoard information, they cover their own butts instead of telling the truth. Decision quality degrades because dissent feels dangerous. In hospitals, errors go unreported. In civic life, polarization deepens. In corporations, innovation stalls. On the surface, unsafe systems look compliant, but inside they're brittle, and brittle systems always break under pressure. The tragedy is that unsafe systems are rarely run by cartoon villains. They're usually led by anxious people who mistake control for stewardship. Leaders who over-explain their correctness, punish small deviations, and then wonder why creativity has evaporated. They forget this truth. The lighthouse does not coerce ships into harbor. It simply shines. Using language is the infrastructure of safety. Here's where we have to go deeper. Safety lives or dies on language. The words leaders choose either humanize or harden, invite or injure. When leaders say we, teams expand. When they say you, teams fracture. When leaders describe mistakes as learning opportunities, trust grows. When they frame mistakes as proof of incompetence, fear takes over. When leaders address behaviors, this action caused this consequence, repair is possible. When they attack identities, you are the problem, shame takes root and silence spreads. Language is literally the architecture of trust. A trauma ward I worked with had an incredible staff, skilled, dedicated, relentless, but turnover skyrocketed. Nurses felt attacked by surgeons, surgeons felt disrespected by administrators. Every meeting turned into a blame fest. The turning point came when leadership began shifting language. Tell us what happened instead of who messed up. What do you need to succeed instead of why didn't you try harder? Within 6 months, error reporting doubled, not because more mistakes were happening, but because staff finally felt safe naming them. Patient outcomes improved, not because staff suddenly got better, but because communication became clean. Safety isn't created in slogans and empty quality control audits. It's the daily discipline of language. Why safe havens matter for trauma survivors. For trauma survivors, whether in the workplace, in families, or in civic spaces, safe havens are not a luxury. They're a necessity of survival. Think about someone who grew up silenced in abuse. Every meeting where they're interrupted without acknowledgement reenacts that harm. Think about someone who endured betrayal by a leader. Every time a promise is broken without explanation, the scar reopens. Safe havens don't erase trauma, but they stop reenacting it. And when reenactment stops, healing can begin. This as a safe haven. All of this isn't abstract for me. I know what it feels like to live in unsafe systems. I was the throwaway daughter of a mother trapped in trafficking. I was a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. I endured domestic violence that taught me silence was the price of survival. Unsafe systems taught me vigilance. They taught me fear. They taught me to expect betrayal. But here's what else I learned. Systems can be rebuilt. Safe havens can be created. Leaders can choose to become lighthouses. When I build structures with my teams, when I step into rooms with first responders, when I sit with survivors, I carry those scars as a compass. I know what unsafe feels like, and I refuse to replicate it. My work isn't theory. It's blood, bone, and breath. It's about creating systems where people don't just survive, they actually can rise up. So here's some practical anchors. Building safe havens. If you want to create a lighthouse culture, here are some anchors that you can put in place. Predictability, regular check-ins, clear expectations, consistent routines. Predictability is nervous system medicine. Boundaries. Define roles and responsibilities because ambiguity is a breeding ground for fear. Study your language. Humanize. Address the behavior, not the identity. Say we more than you. Justice. Apply rules equally. Nothing corrodes safety faster than favoritism or hypocrisy. Repair. When harm happens, and it will, own it quickly. Explain what will change. Make amends. And follow through. Steadfastness is not about perfection. It's about repair. So here are a few questions you can ask yourself when you're ready for some deeper self-reflection. Where in my system might people feel unsafe to speak? How predictable am I in my tone, my routines, and my follow-through? What language do I use most often? Does it humanize or does it harden? When mistakes happen, do I rush to punish or do I use them to build safety? And who in my circle needs me to be a lighthouse right now? I challenge you to be the lighthouse. A lighthouse doesn't end the storm. It doesn't calm the waves. It doesn't promise comfort. What it does is shine steady. That's the kind of leader people are desperate for. Leaders who don't flinch, leaders who don't shame, leaders who don't punish with unpredictability, but who provide the steady beam of trustworthiness that says, you can navigate by this. When leaders create safe havens, families heal. Organizations innovate. Communities breathe again because safety isn't soft, it's strength. It's the infrastructure that makes everything else possible. So thank you for joining me on Rise Up Voices from the Frontlines. Please share this episode with someone you know is standing in the middle of a storm. Remind them that storms don't last, but lighthouses stand the test of time. Join me in the Rise Up Trauma-Informed Leadership course and community, or have us come give your organization a custom training or keynote. And feel free to book a complimentary consultation with me if you want to know more about our Rise Up signature programs for trauma transformation, life mastery, and leadership. Rise up out of the ashes of your experiences and learn to live and lead your life on fire.
Become a Rise Up Hero sponsor to provide mental wellness and crisis response resources for those who serve country and community. Join us in the Rise Up movement today.